Today I'm here with Debra Atkinson from Flipping 50, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation today because, first of all, not only is she super crazy fit and
Mhm.
looks amazing, but she's got so much information to share about what changes in exercise, especially as we're going through menopause and beyond, and things that we need to know. There's so much confusion out there. Thanks for being on today. I've got so many questions for you.
Well, I'm ready to field them, and thank you so much for having me.
So, first of all, take us back because I know you've been sort of in the industry for years and years. You've been the go to expert. I want to know, first of all, years ago when you first started doing this, did you think things would change through perimenopause and menopause? Well,
No, I mean, whoever starts thinking like that, in your 20, you just think, this is the life. I get to teach aerobics and dance around all day in tights, and we wore our underwear on the outside of our tights.
we did with the
That was a
thongs
great
over the
idea.
shiny, over the shiny leggings. I remember.
But no. And I think even oddly enough, and I think back, gosh, I wasn't very smart with it because, going through pregnancy and then postpartum, you go through all kinds of changes. Why would we have not had the forethought to think menopause is going to be different? But again, nobody then talked about it. It was just kind of something buried that women did. And so no, I didn't anticipate it. I had the foresight that came from working with a lot of older women. I mean, older than me. I say so in graduate school, even I was given the alumni, the graduates, of the retirees, because I'd had older siblings and parents. So I adapted really well. I could relate, but I still didn't project for myself. What's this going to be like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember having this bizarre belief, which I guess maybe it's not so bizarre, but I really thought that perimenopause and menopause just wouldn't change if you just stuck to your plan. I mean, that was this belief set that I held, like, oh,
Mhm.
you just eat okay, you eat, you watch your eating, you move your body. Like, no, it's an excuse. I believed that until I started walking through it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think I thought until 2 years ago, so I'm 58, I thought, well, I skated by that one. This really works. Like, just thinking Miss Egotistical, like I'm immune to this. And then it hit me. Then it's like, oh my God, now I know what they're talking about. And I thought I had empathy, but you don't necessarily until you're going through it, literally. So, the great thing is now I do, and I know even more because I've been the one woman's journey that each of us can have. But that really tipped me to, okay, there's no one way. There is a formula, and we can talk about broadly what that is, but then it's got to be more like a blueprint,
Mhm.
like if this, then that. And you've got to ask the question again tomorrow because it can change.
Yeah. Okay. So let's bust some of these myths. First of all,
Right.
let's like, what is it that people are believing
Mm.
supposed to happen in menopause?
Well, I think we believe we're going to gain weight. We accept the fact that we're going to gain weight. And, part of that comes from the medical community. It's, so many of the women, when I first said, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, this is the niche that I'm declaring. I'm going to stop doing all the things. This is the thing. They need me. And it was the echo of, well, my doctor just said, well, welcome to menopause. Like, what do you expect? As if, it's all done, just hang it up and there may not be sex in your life again. And it's just done. And, that was the echo over and over again. But there was also we do this to ourselves. So I have to say this is not other people doing it. We do it to ourselves. And we say, well, I look pretty good for my age. And we tag that for my age onto just so many things. Or you look really good for your age, and we're backhanded complimenting each other, but we are tying an association to it. And I think mentally we all have this idea of what does 75 look? What does 85 look?
Sure.
And all we can do is base it on what we've seen in the past, unless we're meditating the hell out of that, right?
It's interesting. I had this post on social media at the time of this recording this morning and I was making a joke like I always do about menopause or perimenopause and symptoms that go along with it. And some guy wrote under it, "You're only 50 and you're fit and healthy. There's no way you could have menopause." I was like, what an interesting belief or statement. It
Exactly.
has nothing to do with how fit and healthy you are. That is biology and it's what happens. It's what happens.
Yeah, but it shows, right, how much work we have to do. Like,
Sure.
yes,
So
absolutely.
where does this come from? Let's start with like sort of the facts and then what we can actually change. Like where does this come from, this belief that we're going to gain weight and we have to accept it?
Well, number one, I mean, we're in a time right now where you and I think, have to say, just thank goodness. I mean, there's never been a better time to be 50 or 60 than right now, because we literally know we can change the landscape of what the next 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 years looks like for us. We've got control. What we don't have is a model. We are it. We're the model. So I think the myth comes from observing what everybody else did in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And yet nobody is realizing that, just like we're not going to put our cell phones down, we're not going to get off our computers at some point, we're not going to necessarily stop caring about what we eat or exercising either. And therefore, we're going to age very differently than any generation
Mm.
before us. So there's validity to the beliefs that keep getting carried over, but we've got to decide, no, it stops here.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about what changes. What should we be doing differently?
Mm. Well, here's what I'm going to say, and then we're going to have to backtrack. Okay. So not every listener is going to fall into this camp, but never, ever, ever in our lives have we needed intensity the way we do now. So we don't need more of it, though. We don't need more duration and more days a week and more sets and more repetitions, but we do need more intensity. It has to count. So we do need to lift heavier if we can safely do that to the limitations we've got with conditions or joints. We need to get breathless like regularly. I mean, let's face it, life is an interval. So we literally need to train for it. And we've got to be working on bone density and muscle and brain. I mean, those are the three. It's the trilogy.
Okay, so let's break down. I want to break down each trilogy so people have action. So when I hear intensity, when people hear intensity, they put their own meaning on it. So to me, intensity means not necessarily you're training like an Olympic athlete. It just means what's challenging for you. You're pushing it. You're getting into anaerobic. What does intensity mean to you?
Exactly. So in strength training, it means you're picking up a weight. And as we decide, say you're doing 15 repetitions, you reach temporary muscular fatigue. So you get to 12 and you get to 13, and there should be a question in your mind about, am I going to get this last one? If I'm going to get to 15, and you actually find success is not necessarily getting to 15. Is if you go to 16 and 17 and the intention was, we want you to do this and fatigue here, more is not better. Now, if you have a need to pick up a lighter weight, there may be more repetitions in your life, but you still want to, with that assignment, reach muscular fatigue. So when we're talking high intensity interval kinds of training or cardiovascular training, as we know that term, is getting breathless. And someone inevitably is going to be asking, well, what should my heart rate be? And I'm going to say, I don't care, because breathlessness doesn't lie, right? You feel like you're having a heart attack, you probably are, you should stop. So never mind your heart rate. And if you're still feeling very comfortable, don't let someone tell you that a person of your age shouldn't be working that hard.
Can you explain from why though? Because I'm just listening what a listener might be thinking, but what is the harm in not being intense, or what does that create by not being intense?
We are kind of compensating for what happens during aging, really. So if we don't do anything else, we are losing the ability to produce energy, ATP. And we've heard this word, it used to be the M word was metabolism or menopause, and now it's also mitochondria. And I just love that that's almost a household word anymore, but that's your energy production. We had it really easily when we were young. And as we've aged, that also slows down. But we know from science, 70-year-olds can recreate the same amount of mitochondria as 20-year-olds can if they train well. And this is where the exercise gets specific. We can't just exercise and say, well, I walk or I do yoga. We have to get a little bit more specific the older we get, because we're driving on this narrow road now. We don't have this 8-lane highway anymore.
Okay. So intensity is number one. What was number two?
Number two is, making sure, first of all, that you are absolutely strength training, prioritizing that over anything else.
So I want to get really basic here, because I think some people hear strength training and they think they're going to become a bodybuilder. And as you and I know, that is not the case. Bodybuilders work to be bodybuilders. They work very hard to be bodybuilders. Why do women have this fear of strength training, and what defines strength training to you?
Well, I think part of that fear of strength training, again, validated, ladies, but think about when you first learned about strength training and how to do it. If I'm correct, I think the majority of us learned 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10.
Or 3 sets of 12.
Yeah, or honey, either one of those. That's a bulk building protocol. Hello. Yes. And where were we? What were we eating? Yes. Low fat, high carbs. Because
gummy bears, they were fat free.
Right. We can have the whole box of snack flails because it's fat free. And so we were carb loading and doing this strength training. Not a good combination. So it most likely was not the strength training. However, we were also at peak muscle mass, at 25, or if we say, okay, between 20 and 30, we're going to get much better results. Well, you don't have those hormones anymore. And there's a reason why you're experiencing the other things. So you've got to give credit everywhere, right? We don't have the hormones that it takes to build that kind of muscle now. We're going to have to really work for it. So you want to take a look at that, but nobody is bulk building with carbs. We're afraid of carbs. Let's face it. Right?
Okay. What was number three?
Number three. So we've got strength training. We're prioritizing it. We're getting the intensity, and you want to take a look at just base building. Everybody skips it, but the power of walking, having a base of movement every day that you're, I don't care if you're a step counter. I think that really works for some people. I don't like to count anything. I don't like to count carbs or calories. Or whatever, but I know it works for some. And if it works for you, fantastic. But the point is move. You're sitting down. How many minutes, how much time have you spent sitting today? I think you've really got to look at that and say, the more I move, the better off I am going to be. If we look at studies from the Mayo Clinic, the association between movement, all-day movement, and obesity is much stronger than that of exercise and obesity. So even those people who went to the gym 30 minutes or 60 minutes, but if they sat the rest of the day, obesity was still very common. And the opposite is also true. People who move all day but don't necessarily go to the gym tend to be leaner and fitter naturally.
That's such helpful advice here. I love all these. I want to touch a little bit on nutrition, just a little bit. Like what do you do as this knowledgeable trainer? Like, what is your thoughts on nutrition, and has it changed over the years for you?
Oh gosh, absolutely. So, I was having the carbs and the low fat, right? So fat was evil. And now fat makes me full and satisfied, and fat gives flavor. And that's how I think of it. I don't necessarily try to increase my fat. I'm not a keto fan. I'm not anti-keto. I think it has an appropriate time and timing. And I also think we're each unique. So we're experiments of one, and we're going to have to test. But protein is like God, and that's the end of the story. So
yeah, that is a recurring theme. And I hope those of you listening are really hearing this. We talk a lot about protein. We talk about a lot about how it's necessary building block for muscle. I think it's important at any age, but there is something specific about being in perimenopause and menopausal age where it gets absolutely critical. That is the years that our bodies start really physically changing, and we start losing muscle every decade, and protein is the building block that's going to keep it on and help us grow it. So I don't know about you, Deborah. I eat almost my body weight a day in protein.
Yeah, literally. Me too.
Yeah. So I eat that many grams is what you want to be doing. And I would say you pick your ideal body weight and that's the amount of protein you've got to get in. I would say most women are getting way too little and they're not making it the priority.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And shout out and much respect to those girlfriends out there who are doing plant-based diets.
Mhm.
But I also think there's a big difference in the quality of the level of essential amino acids, the building block of protein,
Yes.
compared to animal. And if we're looking at trying to reduce calories, we get much more protein density and fewer calories from animal protein than we do in plant. And
No,
that's,
you have to eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of combining to make that work. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the power of plants, in
right,
addition to animal protein, not in place
exactly.
of my personal opinion. And honestly, there's pretty much everyone you look at that is lean walking through menopause. They are not a vegan. I'm not
Mhm.
saying it can't be done. It is very rare though, for somebody to look that way. I think I get more people saying that they are a vegan. Can you help me? I'm having this problem than the opposite. So just something to look at. I appreciate it for religious reasons and health and ethics and all
Right.
the things.
Yeah,
And there's something to be said for the health that comes along with having that muscle mass. So
that's absolutely true. And you alluded to the point, but specifically the last 2 years of perimenopause, which you often don't know you're there till you were. But that and the first 2 years of postmenopause, I mean, we have this incredible drop or acceleration, if you will, of muscle loss. We have a
yes,
drop in estrogen that relates to
big time.
the drop in muscle. And we've always known drop in bone density. But I think it's time we realize that the reason you gain that 10 pounds, and that is almost universal,
Sure.
like 10-pound fluctuation can happen really easily. And a woman will say, but I didn't change anything. And then I'll say, exactly, right. We need to change
Yes,
something.
exactly. Exactly. Say that louder. That is true. What are your thoughts on, I mean, I'm going to cross over here, but I personally am a huge fan of hormone replacement therapy. Are you a fan of it or not a fan of it?
Oh yeah, I had to be a fan of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't take my advice closely myself. So I thought, well, I'm going to get away with this. I did an Ironman again in 2019, but that was the year that I actually hit menopause and was exposed to mold. And so a lot of big stressors all at once. And I gained about 12 to 14 pounds training
Yep.
for the Ironman.
Yep.
Nobody tries to do that. And I couldn't take it off myself. So I was
Yep.
like, uncle.
Okay. So I want everyone to hear this because I went through the same exact thing. I went through that same exact thing and I'm a fat loss expert,
Right.
as you fitness, all the things. And all of a sudden it's like, what is happening here?
Mhm.
And to me, I'm a huge fan of replenishing hormones, especially if you test for them. It's interesting to me when people think that's cheating, where it's not cheating. We're just giving our body back what it's lacking. And the amount that can correct for us is ginormous. So I'm a huge fan of hormone replacement therapy.
Ditto. And I also think that not just like looking at it at cheating, but I think there is sometimes women are still under the belief that lingers that this is not healthy. It won't be good for them.
From 2002, which has
I,
been
yeah,
debunked.
it's worth a second look. Just ladies, I would encourage you to be open-minded that you may not have all the facts that you believe,
Yes.
because the benefit to your muscle and to your bone and to your brain
Your skin,
for
everything.
aging,
Yes.
is
Dementia, bone loss,
yeah,
all the things.
yeah,
Heart health, all of it.
yeah.
It's interesting. I kind of put it in the same camp as when we all had kids years ago. And it was like, you were heroic if you had natural childbirth. And I'm like, but why would I do that? Give me the drugs, and this is a whole different thing. But I literally look at menopause the same way, like, well, that's great for you. But why are you trying to be heroic and suffer with all the hot flashes when we can
Right.
just do this. So I'm not changed my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think I was at the hospital 15 minutes. And I was like, what do you got? And then I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what else do you got?
But it's the same conversation to me. I'm like, that's great for you, but I'm not going to suffer.
Exactly.
Well, this was super helpful today. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more? How can they, where are you most active on social? All the things.
We are definitely our Facebook group and Instagram at Flipping50 TV, Flipping50 TV, and a really active YouTube group as well. And then Flipping50 all spelled out.com. That's the website. Thanks so much for
Amazing.
having me.
Thanks so much, Debra.